Stand in the corner and think about what you did. That was my introduction to self-reflection at school. It wasn't much of an educational experience. Nowadays, I find self-reflection assignments to be very challenging. Whenever I get such an assignment, I wince and try to figure out what I'm supposed to do. As it turns out, I'm not that far off from the norm. Research of self-reflective journals across multiple contexts have demonstrated that the large majority of students are writing merely descriptive accounts of events. Such journals often show little indication of engagement, higher-order thinking, or critical reflection. Why are student reflections so poor? Research shows that students and educators have difficulties with reflective assignments. While there are many reasons, here are a few. Inconsistent definitions of what reflection is, lack of standards to determine what adequate reflection is, no clear distinction between reflective thinking and other types of thought, and then all of the issues that arise when discussing or assessing an ill-defined topic. Consequently, I decided to investigate and deliver a tutorial on self-reflection and how to assess it from a practical standpoint. We've already accomplished our first objective of identifying some of the challenges learners encounter while completing self-reflection assignments. Additionally, we'll review one possible definition of reflection, of which there are many, introduce and draw connections between Bloom's taxonomy, Kuhl et al.'s operational model of reflection, and Kemper et al.'s 4-category scheme for reflective assessment. Lastly, we'll review examples of how all of this could be applied to a rubric. With these outcomes addressed, as educators, we should be able to design better reflective assignments for our students, and then assess their work with greater validity, reliability, and fairness. Definitions of reflection are ubiquitous, and in my opinion, many are hard to put into practice. Consider these two definitions. Reflection is a form of deep, sustained thought for which the necessary conditions are solitude and slowness. Somewhat more useful is reflection is a dialectical process by which higher-order knowledge is created through the effort to reconcile lower-order elements of knowledge. Personally, I don't know how, as either a learner or an educator, to produce and assess reflective journal entries that would satisfy these definitions. Fortunately, Schoon studied practitioner reflection in the workplace. He thought that reflection took place predominantly under two conditions, on action and inaction. Note the underlined verbs in the definitions. Essentially, on-action reflection took place after an experience, and inaction reflection took place in the moment. In both types of reflection, Schoon suggested that practitioners sought to build new understandings that will shape their actions. In an educational setting where learners are developing and reviewing reflection artifacts like journals or e-portfolios, reflection on action is probably a more appropriate type of reflection to consider. I drew your attention to the verbs used in the definition because these map well to Bloom's taxonomy, and in this case, specifically to his first version, which we'll be using throughout this tutorial. When we consider reviews, describes, analyzes, and evaluates, we're considering different cognitive levels within the taxonomy. This is important for reflection because the learner should be demonstrating higher orders of cognition, such as analysis and evaluation, as opposed to simple lower order knowledge and comprehension. As educators, having a practical definition of reflection that maps well to Bloom's taxonomy is very helpful. Many instructional designers either build their learning outcomes around or in reference to Bloom's taxonomy. Now let's consider Kuhl et al.'s operational model that breaks down aspects of reflection. This identifies how reflection can be performed at 3 increasingly higher orders of cognition. At the lowest level of reflection, the student reviews the experience, which maps to knowledge and comprehension. Next, the learner demonstrates critical analysis, which maps to application and analysis. Finally, the learner produces a reflective outcome, which maps to synthesis and evaluation. You'll know when these aspects have been achieved through identifying the resulting indicators. What is helpful with this breakdown is that each cognitive level is described with reflection aspects and indicators that can be mapped directly to your course learning outcomes as derived from Bloom's taxonomy. Using Schoon's definition of reflection on action and Kuhl et al.'s operational model, you can establish concrete outcomes which you'll communicate to your learners and embed in your assessment rubric. Kember et al. Proposed a 4-category scheme for building a rubric for reflection. At the lowest level, they identify habitual thought or non-reflection that is indicative of lacking any significant thought or consideration. The next level is understanding, whereby the learner exhibits some understanding of the concept or topic as well as an underlying meaning. Higher still is reflection, when the learner takes a concept and makes connections to their personal experiences. Highest and last is critical reflection, where the learner exhibits a transformative shift in their perspectives. Consider how these may map to Bloom's taxonomy. Brock University's Center for Pedagogical Innovation created a critical reflection rubric based on Kember et al.'s scheme. Categories form the horizontal axis and is associated with a grade, and the vertical axis relates to the items being considered. As you assess the learner's reflections, you can look for specific evidence as outlined in the model to ensure validity, reliability, and fairness in your marking. In this brief tutorial, we've identified some of the challenges learners encounter while completing reflective assignments. In response, we've examined Schoen's definition of reflection on action, Kuhl et al.'s operational model, Kember et al.'s 4-category scheme, which all relate back to Bloom's taxonomy. Finally, I introduced an example of a critical reflection rubric from Brock Center for Pedagogical Innovation. Considered together, we should be able to design better self-reflective assignments for our students and then assess their work with greater validity, reliability, and fairness. With luck and effort, it should be much better than having your learners stand in the corner.